Welcome back to the deep dive. Um, Today we are doing something a little dangerous. We're opening up a map.
A map, yeah.
But I'm not talking about a map of like the London Underground or a topography of the Rockies or even a star chart of the Milky Way. We are unfurling a map of destiny.
It is a really bold image, isn't it? The whole idea that you can actually look at a physical piece of paper and see the geography of the soul.
It is huge.
Yeah.
And specifically, we're looking at something called the Golden Chain.
Right.
It's this massive, intricate visual chart from the late 1500s that attempts to do the impossible, really. It tries to connect every single part of theology from God's eternal throne room before time began all the way down to the very specific fate of you and me.
Yeah, and to one unbreakable sequence.
Exactly, one unbreakable sequence.
And just to orient everyone listening, this is part 2 of our 3-part series on Puritan theology and its modern counterparts. In part 1, we introduced the era, the visible saints, the pointed hats, that whole vibe. But today we are tracing what is often called the left side of the golden chain.
The left side. Which, spoiler alert, is the side you want to be on.
Indeed it is. It's the path of election and salvation and glory. It is the blue line as it's often colored in modern reproductions of the chart.
But before we get into the heavy theology, and trust me, folks, it gets heavy, we have to talk about the architect of this map.
We do.
A man named William Perkins. And looking at the source material, I was honestly shocked because you expect a guy who draws a golden chain of salvation to be born with a halo, right? I was expecting like Holy William or Pious Perkins.
Yeah, he definitely did not start out that way.
His nickname was Drunken Perkins.
It is a great detail, isn't it?
The
It really grounds the theologian in reality, because Perkins wasn't born a saint. In his youth at Cambridge, he was known for being reckless and profane and very, very fond of the bottle.
Yeah.
He was the guy you didn't want your kids hanging out with.
And the turning point, his origin story, if you will, is just so cinematic. The sources describe this moment where he is walking through town, probably up to no good, and I was still stumbling a little bit, and he hears a mother disciplining her child.
Yes, it's such a human moment. The child is throwing a tantrum, screaming in the street, and the mother trying to scare the kid into behaving points at William Perkins walking by.
Wow.
She doesn't see a scholar. She sees a wreck, and she says to her child, "Hold your tongue, or I will give you to Drunken Perkins yonder."
Ouch. I mean, that is brutal.
Exactly. Imagine realizing you have become the local boogeyman.
Right.
You aren't just a guy who likes to party. You are the cautionary tale parents use to scare toddlers straight.
That has to be an absolute gut punch.
It was. The sources say it pierced him. It was a moment of profound shame that snapped him out of his recklessness.
Yeah.
It shocked him into the serious study of theology. He realized he was on the wrong path, quite literally on the wrong side of the chart he hadn't even drawn yet.
And that seriousness led to this golden chain. So lay it out for us. What is the actual mission of this specific deep dive today?
Our mission is to trace that left side of Perkins's chart. We are going to look at how Perkins and then later the English Particular Baptists in their 1689 confession understood the exact mechanism of salvation.
Right.
We are taking a stack of sources. We have Perkins' original work, A Golden Chain, and the 1689 Second London Baptist Confession.
And to keep us honest and provide context, we've got modern counter-arguments from provisionist theology, specifically from Leighton Flowers.
Exactly. So we have the map makers, the codified law of the confession, and the modern critics.
Let's start with the chain itself. The core concept here comes from a specific set of verses, right?
Romans 8:28 through 30. If you want to understand the Puritan mind, you have to grapple with this text.
It's the engine room.
It really is. It says, "For whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, whom he predestined these. He also called, whom he called these, he also justified. And whom he justified these, he also glorified."
And Perkins looked at that text and saw a literal chain.
A sequence of clauses, yes.
Yeah.
In his visual chart, there is a heavy black line that represents the causes of damnation, which we will touch on later.
Right.
But there's this beautiful line, the left side, that represents the order of salvation. And the key takeaway, the thing that totally defines this theology, is that the chain is unbreakable.
Unbreakable, meaning you just can't have one link without the others.
Precisely. In the confessional view, there are no dropouts on this specific line. You don't get foreknown and then lost.
Right.
You don't get called and then fail to be justified. If you are foreknown, you will be predestined. If you are called, you will be justified. If you are justified, you will be glorified.
It's like package deal.
It's a tunnel,
Right.
not a funnel. Once you are in, you come out the other side.
Okay, let's unpack this link by link. Because I think for a lot of people listening, these are just fancy religious words. But for Perkins and the writers of the 1689 Confession, these were the actual gears of reality.
They were. They are the blueprint of existence for the believer.
So section 1, the foundation, where does the chart actually begin?
It begins with God. Perkins draws a circle at the very top. The source material emphasizes over and over that God is the first cause.
Nothing is accidental.
Nothing. And this leads us to the doctrine of the decree. If you look at the 1689 Confession, Chapter 3 is literally titled, Of God's Decree.
And this is where it gets heavy immediately because the confession says God has predestinated some men and angels to eternal life.
Yes, and we need to look really closely at the language they used. They speak of God's secret counsel and good pleasure of his will.
Secret counsel. That sounds mysterious. Almost like a classified document or a backroom meeting.
It's meant to be.
Yeah.
It emphasizes that the reason for this choice is locked inside the nature of God himself. It is not external to him.
Right.
The confession is explicit here, and this is a crucial point of debate. It says, this choice is made out of his mere free grace and love without any other thing in the creature as a condition or cause moving him thereunto.
Okay, so that is a really dense 17th century sentence. Let me see if I can translate that into modern English for everyone.
Go for it.
They're basically saying God didn't look down the corridors of time.
Yeah.
See that I was going to be a pretty good guy who chose him, and then say, okay, I pick him because he picked me first.
Exactly. That is the exact view they are specifically rejecting.
Interesting.
That view is often called prescience or simple foresight, that God elects you because he foresaw you would choose him. The 1689 Confession slams the door on that entirely.
He shuts it down.
It says the cause is entirely within God, not in the creature. If the cause was in you, then the chain starts with you, not God.
But wait, the verse says, for whom he foreknew. That is the first link. Doesn't foreknow just mean to know beforehand, like precognition.
And this is the first major battleground in our sources. You have the Puritan confessional definition versus the modern provisions definition, and they are worlds apart.
Let's hear the modern view first, just to set the stage. We have material here from Soteriology 101 and Latent Flowers. How do they read foreknowledge?
They argue that foreknowledge, the Greek word is prognosko, does not mean foreloved or selected in an individual sense.
Okay.
They would say God knows who will believe, or more structurally, God foreknows the corporate body, the church that will be in Christ.
So it's like God built a bus called the church and decided this bus is going to heaven. He foreknew the bus, but he didn't necessarily pick every single individual passenger before they got on the bus.
That is a very common analogy used in that camp. Yeah, the corporate election view.
The bus analogy makes a lot of sense from that perspective.
It does. They argue that the potter and clay analogy in Romans 9 is about nations and service, not individual salvation.
Yeah.
So God foreknows the plan, and he foreknows the class of people, meaning believers, but the individual has to choose to get on the bus.
Okay, so in that view, the foreknowledge is about the plan, not necessarily the person. Now contrast that with Perkins and the 1689 Confession. How do they read foreknow?
They go back to the Hebraic concept of knowing. You have to remember, the New Testament authors were Jewish. They were thinking in Hebrew categories.
Right.
In the Bible, when God knows someone, it is often deeply intimate and relational. Like Adam knew his wife Eve.
Right. It wasn't just data. He didn't just know her height and hair color. It was relationship. It was union.
Exactly. It implies intense affection. So the Puritan view is that God doesn't just know about the elect like a teacher knows facts about a student. He knows them.
He knows them personally.
Yes, he sets his affection upon them before they even exist. It is an active, loving choice.
So it's active, it's relational, it's foreloved.
It is intensely active. The 1689 Confession even doubles down on this. It states that the number of the predestinated is certain and definite and cannot be increased or diminished.
That is very rigid, certain and definite.
It's secure. That is how they viewed it. Because if the number can fluctuate based on human choices, if the bus can arrive empty because nobody chose to get on, then the chain is not golden.
It's reactive.
It's flimsy. Perkins wanted to show a God who initiates and guarantees the result.
Which brings us to the next link, predestination. Romans 8 says, whom he foreknew, he also predestined.
And notice the destination here. This is a point often missed. It's not just predestined to go to heaven.
Okay.
It is predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son.
Oh, that is interesting. So it's not just a change of location from earth to heaven. It's a change of character.
Correct. The goal of the chain is to make you look like Jesus. And this links Romans 8 back to Ephesians 1, which says, "We were chosen before the foundation of the world to be holy and blameless. The end goal is the actual restoration of the image of God in man."
This brings up the whole concept of adoption. I see chapter 12 of the Confession is all about this.
Yes, adoption is the status change. Perkins and the Confession view this as a unilateral divine blessing. You are taken from the family of wrath, the family of Adam, and placed into the family of God.
It's a legal transfer.
It is. And the source material makes a really beautiful point here. Adoption is something we have now. We cry, Abba, Father, but it's also something we eagerly await in its fullness.
Right, like the redemption of the body.
Yeah.
We have the legal papers, we have the family name, but we haven't moved into the mansion yet.
That's a really good way to put it. We have the rights of children, but we are still living in a broken world waiting for the inheritance to be fully realized.
Okay, so we've established the foundation. God chooses. He knows his people relationally. He sets their destiny. This is all happening in the mind of God or eternity past.
Right.
But now we have to get this down to earth. How does this actually happen in a person's life in real time? This brings us to section 2, the execution.
This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the blueprint becomes a building, the link of calling.
Second London Baptist Confession, chapter 10. Of effectual calling. Now, why do they call it effectual? Is there an ineffectual calling?
In their view, yes. Or at least a calling that is external only. They distinguish heavily between the external call and the internal or effectual call.
The external call is what exactly? The preacher on Sunday morning.
Exactly. It's the preacher standing in the pulpit saying, repent and believe. It's the billboard on the highway. It's your grandma telling you to go to church.
It's the gospel tract left on your windshield.
Yes, that goes out to everyone. It hits the ears of the elect and the non-elect alike.
But not everyone listens.
Well,
not everyone responds to that.
Right, and Perkins would say that's not because the message is flawed, but because of the state of the listener, which leads us to the effectual call. This is the Holy Spirit speaking directly to the heart. And the Confession uses very, very specific language here. It says man is wholly passive in this initial work.
Wholly passive?
Yeah.
That sounds kind of weak. Like we're just puppets on a string.
It sounds dead, and that is the point. The source text from the Confession says man is dead in sins and trespasses.
Dead. Not sick, not sleeping.
Dead. This is so crucial for understanding the Puritan framework. You cannot negotiate with the corpse.
Right.
You cannot throw a rope to a dead man and expect him to grab it. The Confession says the Spirit must quicken or make alive. It literally compares the power required for this to the power which raised up Christ from the dead.
So it's a resurrection event.
It is. It's not a gentle nudge. It's not God whispering, hey, give me a chance. It's a spiritual defibrillator.
Well,
it is the Creator saying, let there be light in a dark heart.
This brings us to the big controversy. Free will.
Yeah.
Because if I am passive and I am dead, do I have any say in this at all?
The topic that launches 1,000 debates.
The Confession has a whole chapter on this, chapter 9 of free will, and the sources break down the 4 states of man. I found this really helpful because usually people just argue, do we have free will, yes or no?
Right, it's usually very binary.
But the Confession says, well, which man are you talking about?
Exactly, it's a nuanced timeline of the will. Let's walk through them because this clears up so much confusion. First, the state of innocence. This is Adam before the fall. Did he have free will?
The sources say yes. He was mutable, meaning he could change. He could choose good or he could choose evil.
Right. He wasn't programmed. He had genuine agency. He could have chosen to obey God forever, but he didn't. He fell. And that brings us to the second state, the state of sin.
And this is where Perkins uses that famous analogy of the lame horse.
I love this analogy because it explains the distinction between freedom to act and moral ability. Perkins says, imagine a horse with a crippled leg, severe injury. Now you whip the horse. Can the horse move?
Yes. It has life. It acts.
Right. It is free to move. But when it moves, does it limp?
Inevitably.
Yeah.
Because it's lame. It can't not limp.
Perkins argues that the fallen soul is the lame horse. You are free to choose what you want. You can choose chocolate or vanilla. You can choose to be a banker or an artist. But your wanter is broken.
Your wanter is broken. I like that.
Your leg is lame. So every step you take, every moral choice is tainted by self-interest and sin. You are free to sin, but you are not free to run straight.
So in this state, the Confession says man has lost all ability of will to accompany any spiritual good.
Correct. He is free to choose his favorite flavor of ice cream or his favorite sin, But he is not free to choose God because his nature is at enmity with God.
He hates the things of God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Asking a natural man to choose God is like asking a carnivore to choose a salad. It's just not in his nature.
Which is why the effectual call has to be a resurrection. The leg has to be healed before it can walk.
Precisely. The spirit has to give a new nature, a new heart that wants God. Once that happens, the person chooses God freely and joyfully. But the healing comes first.
Now, we have to represent the other side here. The provisionist argument, we see this in the latent flower source, really pushes back on this dead means dead idea.
They do. They argue that dead is a metaphor for separation, not total inability. Their counter-analogy is often a man who is destitute or a beggar.
Okay.
A beggar can't earn $1 million, but if someone offers him a check, he can reach out his hand to take it.
Or the rope analogy. If you're drowning, you can't save yourself, but you can grab the rope.
Right. They argue that the potter and clay analogy in Romans 9 isn't about God making some people specifically for hell and some for heaven without any choice on their part.
So they see a more flexible sovereignty.
Yes, they would say God's sovereignty is flexible enough to allow for human response. They argue that God throws the rope to everyone, and the difference between the saved and the lost is that one grabs the rope and the other pushes it away.
But the confessional Puritan rebuttal to that is essentially what?
The rope is useless to a corpse.
Wow.
Perkins would say you aren't drowning, you are at the bottom of the ocean, stone dead. Regeneration, the spark of life, must happen before you can even see the rope, let alone grab it.
So regeneration precedes faith.
That is the Puritan mantra. You breathe because you were made alive. You don't breathe to get life.
That is a fundamental difference in how they view the human condition. One sees a sick man who needs help. The other sees a dead man who needs a miracle.
Exactly. And that miracle is the effectual call.
Okay, so God has chosen the foundation. God has called and made alive the execution. Now we get to the status of this person. We are moving down the chain. Section 3, justification and sanctification.
This is where we see the absolute brilliance of the golden chains sequence. Romans 8, whom he called them, he also justified.
Chapter 11, justification. Now, this is a legal term, right? It sounds like a courtroom.
Strictly legal. And this was a massive deal during the Reformation. The Catholic Church taught that God makes you righteous by infusing grace into you, making you a better person so you can be saved.
Like filling up a gas tank.
Right. Basically, you get better and better until you are good enough for heaven.
But the Puritans and the Baptists said no, that's sanctification. Justification is different.
Right. Justification is a judge banging the gavel and saying not guilty. It is a declaration, not a process.
But here's the problem. How can a just judge say not guilty to a lame horse that has been limping and sinning its whole life? If I am a sinner and God says I'm not, isn't God lying?
That is the great dilemma of the gospel. And the answer is the great exchange. This is the doctrine of imputation.
Break that down for us. Imputation.
It's an accounting term, a financial term. It means to credit something to an account. It's a swap. My debts, my sins, my lame walking are credited to Christ's account. He takes them, he pays for them on the cross.
Okay, so my debt is gone. I'm at zero.
But zero isn't enough to get into heaven. You need righteousness. You need a positive score. So Christ's perfect life, his active obedience, keeping the law, never limping once, is credited to my account.
So when God looks at the believer, he doesn't see the lame horse. He sees the perfection of Jesus.
Exactly. He sees the robes of his son. And the confession is very careful to say that faith is just the instrument. Faith isn't the payment.
It's not a work.
No faith is just the empty hand that accepts the payment. And even that faith, as we learned in the previous section, is a gift.
It's gifts all the way down.
All the way down. There is zero room for boasting.
But wait, if I'm declared perfect legally, why do I still sin? Why is the horse still limping? I mean, I looked in the mirror this morning, and I am definitely not Jesus. This brings us to sanctification.
Chapter 13. This is the necessary consequence. If you are justified, you will be sanctified. The chain cannot break. But the confession is surprisingly realistic here. It admits there is a continual and irreconcilable war in the believer.
I found that super comforting in the source material. It doesn't promise instant perfection.
No, it describes a struggle, the flesh lusting against the spirit. But it emphasizes that because the chain holds, the spirit will eventually win.
You are predestined to be conformed.
It's a process. It's like cleaning a dirty room. Justification is the landlord saying you can live here forever. Sanctification is the process of scrubbing the floors.
And this is where the Baptist distinctives start to shine through in the 1689 confession, especially regarding the law.
Yes, there is a fear, and the provisionists raise this objection often, that if you say, God did it all, I did nothing, it leads to laziness or antinomianism, which means lawlessness.
Right. If I'm saved by a decree, why not party like it's 1699?
Exactly, I've got the golden ticket, who cares how I live?
The particular Baptists were fierce about rejecting this. They strongly affirmed the moral law, the Ten Commandments, as binding on the believer, not for salvation, but as the guide for gratitude.
The sources mention the law and gospel dynamic here.
Yeah, break that down.
Perkins would say the law is the mirror. It shows you the dirt on your face. It drives you to Christ to get cleaned.
Yeah.
But once you are cleaned, you don't break the mirror. You use it to keep yourself tidy. The gospel gives us the power to obey the law out of love, not fear of punishment.
I like that. The mirror shows the dirt. The water washes it. You absolutely need both. Now, we've been quoting this 1689 confession a lot. Let's pause and look at the container itself. Section 4. Why are we talking about a second London confession? What happened to the first?
Context is everything here. The first London Confession was written in 1644 by these particular Baptists. But by the 1670s, the political climate had changed drastically. The Baptists were being actively persecuted.
They were illegal.
Completely illegal. They were meeting in forests and basements. The Clarendon Code was in full effect, trying to crush any nonconformists.
And they were being slandered.
Big time. They were lumped in with the Anabaptists of Munster.
Who were they?
Crazy radicals who took over cities and ran around naked. The English government thought Baptists were anarchists and heretics trying to overthrow the state.
So they needed to clear their names fast.
They needed a document that said, hey, look at us. We are not crazy. We are Orthodox Protestants, just like you Presbyterians and Congregationalists. We believe in the Trinity. We believe in the golden chain.
So what did they do? They cheated. They copied the other kids' homework.
In a way, yes. And it was brilliant. They took the Westminster Confession, which the Presbyterians wrote, and the Savoy Declaration, which the Congregationalists wrote, and they purposefully used the exact same wording wherever they could.
It was a strategic move. Look, we agree with 90% of what you guys believe.
Sure.
We are on the same team.
Solidarity. We own this. It was a survival tactic, but it was also a theological statement. They were saying we are reformed.
But they made key edits, and those edits define who they were.
Baptist distinctives. They couldn't copy everything.
The biggest one fits right into our golden chain discussion, covenant theology.
This is where we get into the weeds a bit, but it really matters. The source notes a difference in chapter 7 of God's covenant.
Break it down simply for us.
The Presbyterians viewed the covenant of grace as one long, unbroken thread starting way back in the Old Testament with Abraham. So because Abraham circumcised his babies, they believed Christians should baptize their babies. They viewed the children of believers as being in the covenant.
But the Baptists?
The Baptists in the 1689 Confession emphasized that the covenant of grace is only fully revealed in the new covenant. And here is the kicker. They argue that the new covenant is different because it's made only with the elect.
Those who have the law written on their hearts, like in Jeremiah 31.
Exactly.
And since you can't see an infant's heart, and since an infant can't profess faith...
You don't baptize them. You wait until they profess faith, until they show evidence of that effectual call. That is why they are Baptists.
It stems directly from their view of the golden chain.
Yes. They believe the ordinances, baptism, and the Lord's Supper belong only to those who are actually on the chain.
That makes so much sense. It's not just about how much water do we use. It's about who the covenant is actually for.
Correct. It's about the subjects of the kingdom.
There's also a really fascinating footnote in the sources about elect infants. I think this is important because people often accuse this theology of being cruel to children.
Yes. Chapter 10, paragraph 3, it's a tender spot, since they believe salvation requires hearing the word, the calling, and responding, what about babies who die, or people with severe cognitive disabilities who can't understand a sermon?
The confession affirms that elect infants dying in infancy are regenerated and saved by Christ through the Spirit.
Right. They say the Spirit works when and where and how he pleaseth. They allow for the Spirit to bypass the external call to preaching in those special cases and do the work of regeneration directly.
They trust the character of God.
They trust God to handle those he has chosen even if they can't speak yet.
Okay, we are nearing the end of the map. We've gone from the decree the foundation to calling the execution to justification and sanctification the status. Section 5, the end of the chain.
Glorification.
Romans 8 says, whom he justified these, he also glorified. Past tense, as if it already happened.
That is the grammatical anchor for the doctrine of the perseverance of the saints, the P into a P.
Can the chain break? Can you be justified today and lost tomorrow? Can you be on the blue line and just jump off?
The confession says no. Chapter 17 states that those accepted in the beloved shall certainly persevere therein to the end and be eternally saved.
Why? Is it because they are so good at holding on? Is it because the lame horse suddenly became an Olympian?
No, remember the lame horse. The horse isn't strong enough to hold on. They persevere because of the immutability of the decree.
Because the anchor point at the top of the chart, God's choice, doesn't change.
Exactly. If it depended on our free will, we would all resign from salvation 10 times a day.
Absolutely.
We would wander off. But because it depends on the golden chain of God's purpose, it holds. Perkins called this the golden chain because gold doesn't rust and the chain doesn't snap.
But, and this is the big pastoral question, how do I know? This is the assurance issue, chapter 18. Because if I can't lose it, that's great. But how do I know I actually have it?
This is where Perkins was a genius pastor, not just a cold academic. He understood that people struggle. He distinguished between the objective reality that the chain is strong and the subjective feeling that assurance is shaky.
The sources mention that assurance can shake.
Yes, the confession admits believers can fall into sin and temptation and lose the light of God's countenance. You can feel lost. You can feel like God has totally abandoned you.
You can act like a lame horse and wonder if you ever were a racehorse.
Right.
So what do? You can't climb up to heaven and peek at the secret council list to see if your name is there. Like, excuse me, God, can I check the guest list?
No, and Perkins warns heavily against trying. He calls that prying into the secret things. He says, don't look at the decree, the root, look at the fruit.
Work backward up the chain.
Exactly. It's a syllogism. Do you see sanctification? Do you see a war against sin? Do you see a hunger for Christ? That calling. If those things are happening even imperfectly, even with a limp, then you can trace the chain back and know that you were elected.
The logic is I'm breathing spiritually, so I must have been raised from the dead.
Right. As the old Puritans used to say, the smoke of our sanctification comes from the fire of our justification.
Yeah.
If there is smoke, there is fire.
If you hate your sin, that is a sign of life. Dead men don't hate sin, they enjoy it.
That is it, exactly.
That is really helpful. It grounds the confidence in something tangible without making it about earning it.
It connects back to the comfortable dependence on God mentioned in the intro. The doctrine of the Trinity and this golden chain isn't meant to be a cold logic puzzle.
Right.
It's meant to be the foundation of communion with God. You can rest because He is holding the chain.
So let's zoom out. We've traversed the left side, from the secret decree of the Father, executed by the Son, applied by the Spirit, resulting in glory.
It's a symphony of salvation. It's a massive coordinated rescue mission.
So what? What is the takeaway for you, the listener, who is just trying to get through a Tuesday? Why does a 400-year-old chart actually matter to you today?
Two things, I think. First, humility. This system removes all boasting. If you were saved, it's not because you were smarter, wiser, or more foreknown for your goodness.
It wasn't because you were the smart kid who got on the bus.
It is purely 100% an act of grace.
Yeah.
That should kill spiritual pride. You are a beggar who is given a kingdom.
And second,
Stability. Romans 8:28, all things work together for good, is the context for this chain. If your salvation is this secure, rigged by God from eternity past to eternity future, then the suffering of this present time is manageable.
it has a purpose.
It's a link, not a break. The difficult things you go through are part of the conforming process.
That's powerful. It gives real meaning to the struggle. But I can hear the objection screaming in the back of my head right now. I know you listeners are thinking it.
I hear it too. It's the elephant in the room.
We looked at the blue line, the happy line, the line of salvation. But Perkins' chart has another line, a heavy black line.
The line of reprobation.
If God is so sovereign over the left side, is He equally sovereign over the right side? Did He create people for the black line?
That is the dark shadow of the golden chain. It's the question that makes everyone uncomfortable.
And the provisionists, Leighton Flowers and others, would scream, what about love? Does God love everyone or just the people on the blue line?
It raises the ultimate question of the character of God. Is He a monster who creates victims or a judge who punishes rebels?
And that, my friends, is exactly where we're going next.
We have to. You can't understand the beauty of particular redemption without facing the universal question.
So join us for part 3, the battle for redemption. We're going to take the gloves off. We will contrast this Puritan view of limited atonement, the idea that Christ died specifically for the sheep, with the provisionist view that He died for every single person.
Does world mean world? And how does your definition of love change your definition of God?
It's going to be a heated one. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
See you next time.